everybody. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. My name is Martin Loffers. I'm the Chief Trend Watcher of Supply Chain Media. I'm also known as Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Movement, the quarterly magazine and bi-weekly newsletter. And for this next 60 minutes, we have a live webinar. And well, later on in this week, it is International Women's Day, coming Friday. But because of this, we'll have a webinar talking about female supply chain leadership. For the short term and for the long term. So we have two experts on this topic. So as you see here on the left, that's me. And in the middle, Beth Morgan. She's founder and CEO of Boom. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Martin. Great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
You're welcome. And next, Anna Petrova from Kraft Heinz. Anna, hi.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you and great to be here.
So, and Anna has a great resume and large responsibilities in supply chain, hands-on, but also large teams. And Kraft Heinz, I hardly have to introduce this company, I think. So, welcome for joining us, Anna. For the audience, this webinar will be recorded and will be made available as a PDF within 48 hours. So, but feel free to have a conversation with us. So there are two ways to ask questions. You see the chat function on the right-hand side, but I would prefer that you would use the Q&A functionality. You see these small text bubbles. If you want to ask questions to the three of us, or especially Anna and Beth, please use the Q&A functionality so people can watch it and even I can track it. So if these questions are in line of the conversation we'll be having, I will ask these questions immediately. And otherwise, we'll reserve it for the end. So we have a Q&A also at the end. So afterwards, we have an extra 30 minutes. So Beth, Anna, and I will be sitting at table 1. So you can join us. So after the 60 minutes, if you still have questions, or if you want to have a conversation with us, feel free to join us in the virtual lounge. And a kind of Zoom meeting will open up and we'll be there. All right. So we're going to talk about female leadership in the supply chain, but to kick it off, it will be interesting to see, okay, what are CEOs talking about? And this overview will reflect what CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are talking about. This is a transcript of all the phrases they are using during their quarterly earning calls. Largely American companies, but Fortune 500 companies, big companies. So these are the topics they are talking about. And to explain this briefly, to the right, you see the number of times a phrase has been mentioned. So supply chain is on this list, every quarter, I would say. So even CEOs are talking about supply chains. As of the start of COVID, this matrix has been developed, and you've seen that when you go back, supply chain as a phrase, it's the talk of the town, also among CEOs. But economic concerns and other ones, geopolitical uncertainty is also mentioned. But Anna, from your perspective from Kraft Heinz, what is your view if you look at this overview of topics?
Well, supply chain importance has been magnified and amplified throughout the years of pandemic. Everybody in the food industry has experienced a huge focus on service and making sure that we produce enough food for our consumers. I would say supply chain deserves to be there for sure. Generative AI and focus on digital, I believe, according to Gartner, is on 87% of CEOs' agenda. Mm-hmm. The world is talking about digital, mostly in an attempt to build more resilient supply chains and to make sure that we move away from the reactive behaviors that we demonstrated during the pandemic response, more towards proactive ways of dealing with potential risks and disruptions. A lot on this chart talks about external risks, potential disruptions, known and potentially unknown to us, and building resilient supply chains is the is the key priority for all of us right now.
Yeah, and I highlighted the HR related topics more to the left. What is your opinion, Anna? If you look at that, is it a surprise that these topics, highlighted in red, are more to the left, so to the lesser importance than the other one, like geopolitical uncertainty and supply chain?
Well, frankly, reskilling surprises me, because I believe that reskilling is definitely of a higher importance, because it goes hand in hand with digitalization strategy, right? We need to make sure that our workforce has the new capabilities that come with digital revolution and revolutionizing of our workspace and ways of working. When I see hiring freeze and layoffs, I believe it doesn't ring the bell for the company where I work, but I have to say, this could be a response to overbuilt capacity that the businesses have created during the years of pandemic, just to sort of de-risk the operation. I do believe, though, that those types of initiatives should be considered as absolutely lost. They do not have a very good proven track record to support business growth, to support the strategy of resiliency, and quite frankly, could even be detrimental in terms of losing the right skill set in the company and the right level of institutional knowledge that is so important as you go through transformation.
Yeah, and Beth, if you look at it at this overview, what's your response?
Yeah, I mean, building on what Anna was just saying there about not ringing the bell there, certainly at Kraft Heinz, I think with the businesses that I speak to in the supply chain leadership there, they are, I mean, in supply chain in general, we've been talking about a talent crisis in supply
Yeah.
chain for
Mm-hmm.
years.
Exactly.
And that's about, finding enough qualified people and reskilling the people that we have to become more resilient and ready for all the change coming ahead. So actually, I think these the words that are reflected on this chart, gosh, if you're a CEO, your hair's going to go grey, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot here. But this is about, the quarterly picture of what's happening, right now. Some of it's a bit more longer term, but this is very much what's impacting the share price right now, and a bit more reactive, I'd say. The challenge that always faces supply chain leadership is yes, having to manage these short and midterm, but actually, how do you build for the future? Because that takes a bit of a longer term view. So but this is fascinating, and absolutely right that supply chain should be front and center on here. That's very deserved.
All right. So getting over to you, Bethany, maybe you could explain a bit more. Your company, Boom. It's quite a young company. Maybe you can explain what Boom is all doing.
Just very briefly as a background, because I think it probably serves as a backdrop to the survey data that we're going to look at a little bit later. My personal background has been as an industry analyst since the mid-90s, looking at best practices across supply chain, and that's been a real privilege to work with lots of different companies, different senior leaders across sectors and around the world, and just saying, what are the challenges and opportunities that you're facing? And one of those that actually came up even more pertinently was about probably, I'd say, 2013, 2014, when this whole question of how do we make sure that we have a more gender parity in the supply chain profession, because I certainly remember then, and it'd be interesting to know your experience looking back. Sometimes you could look around the room and think, okay, I might be the only woman in the room, or perhaps there are a few more. And companies are looking at this, and we're going to talk about why that is, and saying, actually, this is something we need to look at, and it's really important for a number of reasons. So I started as part of the research team at SCM World and then Gartner, looking at, okay, what can we do about this, and what are companies doing that we can all learn from? And to cut a very long story short, this led to me starting Boom in 2019 now, which is a global community for women in supply chain. And that does two things. That on one hand brings together women from all around the world, as you can see, from across a spread of sectors, a spread of roles, and also levels of seniority, to network, to inspire each other, to share stories, to support all those good things. But what we're also doing is working with companies, with leaders, with D&I experts and say, okay, what can you do also from an organizational perspective to make sure that you are attracting, retaining, and elevating women into senior leadership roles, should they want, or if they actually just want to stay where they are and be experts in that area, how can you do that so that they can flourish, and in a way that actually everybody wins? Because this isn't sort of, more women down with men. Absolutely not. It's about creating high performing teams where everyone wins.
So maybe you can explain why we're having this webinar and why female leadership is important, or DUI is important, and especially in supply chain.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we, this is a question that I think it's important to keep on looking at, because it's still a message that needs to get out there. If you look around our, society, we are pretty much a 50-50 population. I think actually there's 51% females in the world, maybe 49% men actually. But nevertheless, let's say 50-50. But if we look in business, you just don't have that balance. So it's just like, come on, we need to reflect our societies. We need to reflect our customer bases, the world in which we live. So there's kind of and sort of like a moral imperative. It's just like, it's the right thing to do, right? But actually, more importantly from that, going back to our CEO dilemmas at the beginning, is there's a business imperative actually to having a diverse workforce. And of course, that isn't just about gender. There are lots of different other diverse characteristics that we can talk about and should look at. But the big one, the big 50-50, is gender, clearly. So one of those we've already mentioned actually is this talent war imperative. It's like, we need to bring all the best people to the table to manage these challenges that we're facing. So let's widen the talent pool and make sure that we've got enough well qualified, skilled people in that pool that we can draw on. The second one is, and by the way, this is in no order of importance, but the second one here is the financial imperative. So actually, there's a lot of data out there which looks at companies that have an above average ratio of women at board level, at senior leadership team level, that they actually deliver more profit. They're more profitable. There is a lot of studies on that. So that's one. The other one I mentioned already is kind of reflecting our experience and our societies and our sort of our cultural backgrounds, is innovation. We need to bring a diverse set of experience to the table in order to be innovative. So all kinds, but of course gender can deliver on that as well. So there are many more reasons, but these are kind of the main ones that we talk about.
So Anna, if you look at this, do you recognize these imperatives at Kraft Heinz? And you are leading now a team of 50 people with 6 direct reports. So,
I recognize this imperative throughout the 30 years of my career in CPG. And I love, I could be studied by Beth, maybe in an offline special study, because I lived through many different waves of how the businesses approached the topic of diversity, if they ever approach that topic. I have a couple of reflections very briefly. First of all, I think that diversity is not just for extracting internal value for the culture. We have very diverse customer base. Every well-run organization that wants to grow has to create products and sell products and services to a diverse customer group. So how can we cater to their needs if we are not diverse internally? Then you're going to end up having a business culture of what is good for you and not as what is truly, organically developed as a good product. And the other consideration, I would say, diversity of thought is extremely important for the well-run organizations that Beth has mentioned. I think, which again, in return, has to come with a very high level of psychological safety. Typically, successful companies allow for a very good diversity of thought around in the boardroom, on the production floor. They talk a lot. They have discussions. They debate things and let the best idea win, no matter who you are, no matter what level in the organization you are in. So psychological safety is a big component that goes hand in hand with diversity.
I still remember. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Martin. I was just going to say that's a hugely important point about that safety, and I think that speaks to the whole. So it being International Women's Day on Friday, and the theme this year being inclusion.
Yep.
Again, inclusion speaks, that means lots of things to different people, but I think it's basically creating environments where everybody feels safe and at their best to perform in whichever way they can deliver on that. Very quickly, I wanted to add, it's great that this isn't just an internal for an organization and its customer base. Actually, we're seeing a lot more companies implementing supplier diversity programs as well. So making sure that the whole supply chain actually has the same ethos of thinking, because it's all connected. So, that's a whole other subject, which is fascinating.
Yeah. And regarding inclusion, it also means that everybody is being heard. It is not only, you have, an equal base of men and women but also that they all get the opportunity to tell something and then to add something. And getting back to a diverse customer base, I still remember, there's a famous boardroom meeting in the analysts of Nokia when they went into the downturn. So there was only men above 50. And I still remember the CEO explaining to the analysts, we did nothing wrong. And, come on, there's a totally male board above 50. Yes, you did something wrong because your board was not that diverse. Otherwise, you would have other influx of what you should be doing as a mobile phone manufacturer. So, but that's a reflection on how it will work out, and that
And I remember anecdotally in the 1990s there was, I'm not going to mention the company, there was an ad that was produced with a basketball team in it, and there was not a single man of color in a basketball team in that ad, which was very interesting, and we kind of picked up on that. So yeah, we have evolved since then, but still lots of work to do.
Yeah. And now we go briefly through the data of the Gartner and awesome survey. So Beth, can you explain it briefly?
Yeah, again, very quickly, I think this is a really important level set because, well, hey, supply chain people love data, right? We need to see our progress. And this is really important because we need to see where we're coming from so that we can see, the amount of work that actually does still need to be done. And, it's great that since 2016, Gartner, in partnership with Awesome, has done this annual survey, which actually says, hey, so how many women do we have? And actually, so the data on this slide shows the percentage of women from the supply chain workforce overall, and that's hierarchically from sort of individual contributors right up to board level. And you can see from this chart that actually, although the number's gone up, it's gone up very, very slowly. It's going up quite a glacial pace. So, that needs to obviously just keep on going. And hopefully, when we talk about next generation pipeline a bit later on, that will continue to grow. One comment on this that I always make, which is that the survey has historically, it's changing slightly. It is mostly North American focused. So I think the numbers here are quite positive and probably don't reflect the true status of affairs from a global perspective. So it's going to differ by industry sector. It's going to differ by geography. We were talking a bit offline earlier. It's going to differ even within supply chain itself, that we might have more women in planning, for example, versus on the manufacturing floor. So there's lots of variety within this, but the trajectory is up. The next slide, when we come to that, will give us a bit more flesh on or paint on the picture, which is really to break that down by level of hierarchy and look at, okay, so we've got the pipeline at the beginning. In fact, we haven't got individual contributors on here, but we've got first line managers and supervisors. So right from the start, of course, there are more male than female represented at that level. And of course, the higher you go through the hierarchy, that number drops off. And the questions, I'm sure we're going to discuss some of them, is kind of why and what can we do about it. But the point I would leave you with here is that actually, if you take this picture year on year, there is actually movement within it. So we've seen, particularly in the last 12 months or so, that the number of women at that very senior level, so the CSCO, EVP, SVP, CPO, and CEO, and equivalent job titles, that has gone up, which is fantastic. Still only 26%, so some way to go, but that number has gone up quite dramatically over recent years. what that has meant, however, is that if you look backwards through the hierarchy, it's kind of left a bit of a vacuum in
Yeah.
terms of, okay, some women have been promoted into these roles. We need to keep on filling that pipeline. So actually, it's more like 50-50 at the beginning.
Yeah,
And then
if you
that
look at
follows through.
Yeah, and if you look closely, at the start of this chart to the left, the influx, when you look at university level, it's 50-50. People from university level, but in the blue collar environment, it's still male dominated to one extent. So it's also a matter of what level are you looking at it. And if you are looking at
Yep.
blue collar worker in the factories and the warehouses, that's probably more dominated by a male environment, whereas university level influx, it is almost 50-50, especially in the Netherlands. I've seen. So that's
Yeah, and in
also
some
a
cases,
change.
actually, we're hearing that there are more
Women are
women at
exceeding.
that university level than men.
Yeah.
But you're right, Martin. I think you're absolutely right that there is that difference depending on what area you're looking at.
Yep.
And also worth saying, and this is in the Gartner report, which is freely available to everybody to go and download if you want to take a look, that if you then sort of break this down and look at women and men of color, actually,
Yep.
the numbers are even smaller. So if you
Yep.
look at those intersectionalities between gender and other variables, it's a whole other picture again. But I think, it's great that we have this survey. We're going to talk about and actually make a very polite, strong but polite request for, if you haven't done this, to take part in it this year and let us
Yep.
know what it looks like for your organization so that we can have as true a picture as possible. And yeah, hopefully, we can actually get into some more of those, the granularity of that data going forward as well.
So Anna, what is your reflection if you look at this? If you look at Kraft Heinz, for example?
I don't have numbers for Kraft Heinz or for other organizations where I worked. I can tell you, speaking of the very far right box,
Mm-hmm.
when I was on the leadership team of Conagra, actually when I was on the leadership team of Kraft Heinz in Canada as well, this was more of a 50-50 split. So there are organizations where, again, probably the industries are different, companies are different. There are some fairly balanced organizations where senior leadership is showing a more equal proportion. My biggest concern, and I'm sure you are leading on to it, Martin, is what happens, right? What is going on between, in this pipeline that is reducing the percentage of women so fairly drastically.
Yeah.
From the bottom to the top. And I think I have some speculations as to what is going on, but what it tells me is that we definitely can all do better in our respective businesses to foster talent and to build better, diverse, and purposeful pipelines for our talent and further develop our bench strength.
Yeah. So before we get to the survey Beth has been doing, do you have an observation about why the numbers are dropping off in the middle management kind of layer, Beth?
Oh, that is the $1 million question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The answer to that is not simple. So there is no one single reason. Some of it is going to be obviously very individual circumstances and so on, but we know that a lot of reasons are perhaps systemic, and cultural. So things like unconscious bias, that we tend to recruit and choose to work with people who look like ourselves, which is maybe why you mentioned Nokia having 50 men. That was their norm. That's just how they did things. So it takes something to actually make a purposeful change to those kind of scenarios. Other ones are, and we're going to come to this right at the end, actually, what can companies do? There are things around, if you think, for example, about in a manufacturing plant where you might have shift work going on. There was very, simple practicalities about making sure that shift patterns actually work around school and nursery hours, for example, where women do tend to, where women are the primary caregivers for children.
Mhm.
Obviously, men are too, but so it's very, very, at one extreme, very systemic and cultural. Others are very practical things, making sure that working environments are inclusive on numerous different levels. But if we actually look at, why women leave, and again, this is survey data from the Gartner report, it's usually to do with career opportunity and seeing what opportunities may lie ahead. And I think this is a big area, as we'll see, that some companies do this very well and show you what your future career path may look like, others not so much. The surveys that we've done have shown that men tend to move around a bit more in between jobs. Again, this is sort of, big sweeping data points, but it might be that because of that, men are a bit more confident in taking on roles that they don't feel ready for. I think we all know that data now, that women won't apply for a job if they haven't got 100% of the skills required, whereas men do. There's all sorts of psychological, I think, and cultural elements that go into this.
Yeah, and I think that the maternity leave and how companies are handle these are also things that could be of consideration and in this kind of things. But
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
and the final slide of Gartner, and it's quite interesting. How many companies have actual targets and general ones? What is your observation here?
Yeah, really quickly. I mean, I think Anna's actually already said this. We need to do more. And, progress is great, but actually it's not just talking about it. It's not just saying, oh, this is a good idea and having sort of general objectives. It's actually being very purposeful, actually having very specific goals, and then actually taking very specific purposeful actions to underscore those. So you can see the number of actually companies that are actually making bold statements. Sometimes it's still just internal. Sometimes they're actually making these statements externally and saying, okay, we want to achieve, let's say, 40%, 40/60 at a certain level of management, and actually they're putting that out there. And once you've put that out there, you have to do something very purposeful about that to meet that goal. So I think the more companies that actually do that, and they see that companies are doing that, are reaping the benefits of it, then it's almost, a bit of a snowball effect. So that's my sort of takeaway from this is, if you're not doing something on this, give it focus, give it effort. This isn't something that you do as a sort of, an after work hobby, of making sure that we have women's groups and so on. It's just like, no, invest in people, invest in your, your practices, your processes, your systems. Really focus on your culture to actually make some changes, because that's the only way it's really going to change.
And you see now companies that are doing more and more, having commitments on sustainability. They should also have
Yeah.
commitment on the DEI.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and express it
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Anna, what do you think? Oh, sorry, I was just going to ask Anna what she thought about that.
Anna?
I love everything Beth is sharing with us, because I really appreciate that you have added this numeric factual base to something that we all have long suspected. I think honestly, anything we'll do is an improvement in this topic. And I have recently moved back to Europe. I have been living in Amsterdam since November 22. And I was expecting this topic to be in a lot greater shape in Europe than I have seen, it to be in North America, at least from the intentionality perspective. I find that, all the conferences I have ever attended and frankly, business conversations, the topic of diversity has been embraced as one, maybe not one of the KPIs per se by the business, but it's definitely part of sustainability agenda. And in my humble personal opinion, Europe being so ahead of North America on sustainability altogether, I think it should just be a seamless act of adding diversity and inclusion to the ambition. And Martin, kudos to you for organizing this event, because I don't think we have a lot of those. It is still largely in some, it feels that way anyway. After coming to a couple of supply chain conferences, it feels that it is a topic that not every leader brings up. And it could be a result of maybe addressing it with the wrong tone of voice, because I think it's very important that we appreciate men as allies of this topic in the workplace, as men who will help us to have a balanced board and a meeting room, and who will personally make sure that they become very strong advocate of equality in the workplace. And I think that's the only way to go. And I'm very happy to be in this event. Thank you.
And again, this is the link to the Gartner survey. So if anything you can do, as a supply chain professional, please fill out this survey, because we need this data.
But even Gartner, I mean, I've been to a couple of Gartner conferences. This one in Barcelona last year is the first time I saw the real key focal point of a discussion on D&I in operations. I think even for Gartner, it is sort of new. And kudos to Beth for creating this transparency and the factual conversation around it. Thank you.
All right. And again, but now we get to the different kind of service Boon has to be doing, and the latest one is about supply chain 50/50. So Beth, maybe I can explain what you have been doing and address the latest one. Yeah.
Being an analyst, doing research is kind of in my blood. So even when we started Boom and did some things that were slightly different, I still had this urge to actually look at. No, it's not. I can see in the text here. No, it's not sponsored by Gartner, but actually, they have the data on this. So anybody else, feel free to do it. We have started doing our own surveys and taking the temperature of the global supply chain profession. And actually, the survey is open to each year have been open to everybody around the world. You don't have to be a Boom member. Everybody. You don't have to be female. Everybody can take part. Because what we wanted to ask were these tough questions, which are looking at, first of all, we looked at career progression. Then we looked at some of the pandemic issues. Last year, we asked the really important question: what do you need as a supply chain professional to thrive, to really succeed in your career? That was a great one. We followed that on this year based on the conversations that we were having with our members and senior leaders on our advisory board, which was about that longer term view that we mentioned at the beginning. So it's really about filling that pipeline, and what does the situation look like for the next generation of supply chain talent, so our future leaders, right? And this speaks to what we're here to talk about today. These young people coming into the profession are the leaders of tomorrow. So how do we set them up for success from the beginning with that long-term view of career development and succession planning, skilling, upskilling? How do we do that? Because they are a different generation. The majority of young people who joined this profession, and when we talk about the next generation, for the purposes of the survey, we looked at people who were in their first 5 years of their role. The majority of those young people joined the profession during a pandemic. And the fact that they joined supply chain during a pandemic is frankly amazing, because it was a tough time. So kind of a baptism of fire, right? If you're starting. As we're giving out kudos to all those young people who have joined the profession during that time and are still here and are developing to those leaders. So what I wanted to do was just share with you some of the findings from the report, and have a discussion around that.
Yeah. So you have 4 angles. So explain what are the 4 angles you will address. Yeah.
So we asked the survey cohort to tell us what they needed, to help, kind of as a follow-on to the previous year report, is what can we do as organizations? And the first one was, how do we attract young people to the profession? So attract me. The second was, okay, I'm in the profession now, I've joined. How can you make sure that I am developed ongoing in my career so that I see the skills that I need to be productive and effective in my job? The third area that came out was, okay, if I'm going to do this, give me the right tools to do this. Okay, so equip me with the right, and in many cases that meant digital, actually. The fourth area was advance me. Show me a way forward. Show me where my career could go, and give me the tools and the support that I need to actually do that. And last of all, but not by no means least, was in the middle of this picture, include me. So what can businesses do? What are young people looking for from employers, and what are they asking for in terms of, joining inclusive cultures that will help them thrive? So those were the 5 key areas.
Okay. So and let's go to the first one. So what is it? How do you attract talent?
Yeah, so this was really interesting. In fact, we did this poll on LinkedIn before we did it as part of the survey. And it's like, in fact, I mean, I don't know if we can do polls in this smart time, but I'm going to ask everybody we won't hear you, or maybe you can see in the chat. For those of you who are sort of 5 years plus in your career in supply chain, how did you get there? Did you fall into it by accident? Most people we speak to go, yeah, kind of did. I fell into it by accident. It wasn't called supply chain when I started. I started somewhere else, and here we are. We're all in supply chain. The really big difference now is that actually supply chain more than ever is an intentional career choice. And the reasons for that were because it's becoming more well known. There you go. Somebody's fallen into it by accident in 1999. Thank you, Heike, for sharing that. You're not alone. It's kind of same for me too. Yeah, Anna, was it the same for you? Did you fall in by
Absolutely.
accident?
I was just
There you go.
typing
Okay.
because I don't mean that I fell totally by accident, but then I made a conscious choice to stay.
Excellent. So yeah, it's for the majority of cases, but now it's actually a thing. And actually, I think we probably have the pandemic to thank for that in a way, that supply chain is now sort of more in the broader public consciousness as a career choice. So yes, you can see here, for those in their first 5 years, that's a sort of yellow gold color, 23% were recommended by a careers advisor at school or at college, or recommended by, a friend, family, somebody in their network, or 12%, yeah, they heard about it in the media. And we did actually do, in the research interviews we did, spoke to individuals who said, yeah, I joined because of the pandemic, because I went to the shops and there was no toilet paper, there was no pasta. It made me think, that's why they got into supply chain. And I think that's it's a positive news story out of the pandemic, if nothing else.
Yeah. So what I know, 15 years ago, the Erasmus University of Rotterdam changed the master course from logistic management into supply chain management. And when it was called logistic management, 1 out of 10 was female, the students. And when it changes within a year, it's 3 out of 10. And now it's more than 50%, 55% is female. So the change of the name of logistic management into supply chain management 15 years ago made already a big change in that area. So that is also what you could see.
Words and how it's positioned, really, really important. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at this, so what are the practices in this case?
Yeah, again, what we're seeing, and we'd like to do this year on year so we can see the trends here. But again, in terms of putting in systems and programs in place to actually build that bridge between education and into the workforce. So 63% of companies, actively recruiting interns, or in the US, I think they call them the co-ops, different names in different parts of the world. 27% offering graduate programs, placements, 49%, and apprenticeships, that's a slightly lower number. I think we need to see more there, and that's probably again on a country by country basis, probably differs quite a lot, but there are very targeted recruitment practices. So companies, whilst they are dealing with things like layoffs and shortages now, actually these are things that companies are putting in place to really plan for the long term, and this is great to see.
So Anna, what is your experience in your environment at Kraft Heinz and the other companies you're working for?
In my history and my experience, we did a lot of apprenticeships, and typically a lot of interns. University placements would be a great idea for North America, where universities are so expensive. So I think that it probably is not being done because of the cost reasons, but I have seen a lot of interns, and some of them are still with us. Now, how do we make sure the middle management that we saw in the previous pipeline, how do we make sure that our middle management is truly embracing these newcomers to give these people the truly best and enticing and attractive experience working for us is the key. Otherwise they will not, otherwise they will be disillusioned, especially coming out of schools. we need to really make sure we give them the best experience ever as interns.
I know Mars because my daughter did an internship at Mars. So when you become a manager at Mars, so you will have a team to lead, you're also able to have an intern. So basically, I mean, when you become a manager, you get the you need to also coach someone intern. So that's a normal rule. Becoming a manager means that you want to manage also an intern automatically, and basically that's a nice way. If you can lead a team, you can also help out an internship.
So in Kraft Heinz, for example, I'm so sorry, just a quick example.
No, go ahead.
Interns have a lot of exposure from the global CEO. In fact, we had an international leadership conference once, and Miguel Patricio, who is now our chairman of the board, he's no longer the CEO, but back then he was. He even told the rest of us leaders, he said, the best questions that I ever receive always come from interns. So he spent a lot of time with them, and some of them are like really, really have already brilliant careers with us, building control towers, and doing all these fantastic things. So yeah, it's a great source of talent, but it's a lot of responsibility and accountability on us as incumbent leaders to make sure that this talent finds us attractive as a future workplace. So that's on us.
Beth, you
Agree.
want something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to add, sort of, if we were to give it a name as well, this whole concept of reverse mentoring.
Oh yeah.
Mentoring, we're going to talk about, that's really important, to develop this next generation, but actually having that reverse exposure for senior leaders to actually see, to your point, Anna, what is it that this generation really needs? Having situations like that you mentioned, Martin, where you've got that direct connection between leadership and an intern, it's like you get it from the horse's mouth, as they say.
Yeah. So next, you also ask, what is it that attracts the new talents to the company?
Yeah, and kind of no surprise here, because everybody's got bills to pay, right? There's compensation and benefits. That's a pretty important choice when you're choosing an employer. But what is really interesting is what comes after that. And I think we've seen this change over recent years, and this probably is a reflection of the pandemic and the expectations, particularly of this next generation, is that young talent are looking for work-life balance. They're looking for support for flexible, hybrid, and remote working. They're looking, they're actively seeking development and training. Perhaps that's probably not changed. Fast career progression. I think we know, that's certainly what they're looking for too. But those number 2 and number 3 there from the top, work-life balance, flexible, remote working. This isn't about, having an easier, less stressful life. It's actually, again, having creating environments where everybody can thrive. And if that means that you don't have to commute every day, and you can spend some time maybe you want to study in the evening or whatever it is, spend time with family, that if companies don't offer that, we're already seeing this, right, in the media, companies that have mandated you must all come back to work, even clearly if you work in a factory or a warehouse, you have to be there. For roles that don't have to be, those companies that are offering a more flexid, hybrid way of working, they are more attractive to this generation. So that's really something to think about as we're, I think, still transitioning out of this post-pandemic environment.
Yeah, Anna reflected on what the CEOs are talking about, reskilling and upskilling. Maybe that's also something you can talk about, Beth, in this slide about how to develop people.
Yeah, this is an interesting, I think, I can't remember whether it was you, Martin, or Anna talked about, being disillusioned when you actually join the workforce. Again, it's kind of setting the next generation up for success. What we wanted to know was, what does the next generation come to the profession thinking that they need in terms of skills? They're not going to know it all from the start. That's a very, false expectation. But we asked them, okay, what did you find? You've perhaps been to college, you've been to university, you've studied supply chain for 3-4 years, you've done an internship, but what did you find was missing? And actually, interestingly, they found that role-focused supply chain knowledge was missing. Now, of course, you can't study all of it, at college, at university, but there are more specific skills, things like negotiation, influencing skills, change management skills. These are all soft skills that we all know are so super important in the world of supply chain, but they're not always taught at school and college level. So actually, when young people come into the profession, they're kind of a bit like, I don't have these skills off the bat. Now, of course, perhaps we don't expect them to, but those are the ones that they feel they are missing and would like to have. So when we actually, as part of our survey, spoke with academics from universities, and in fact, I think it was Cranfield in the UK, that said they now have specific courses that are focused on skills like negotiation and influencing, which, I never had that at university. I would have loved to have done something on that. So I think we just need to have that feedback loop between, what businesses need, what young people think are missing, and try and build that in either at the education level or into the working environment. Make sure that those training opportunities are there.
I used to be actually on a couple of industry boards for a few colleges in Canada before I moved here. And it's a very good experience where practices are coming together with academics, and they ask us what is relevant for you, what do you need in terms of skills and in terms of capabilities. And then they go and they adjust their programs, which is really, really cool experience. I like
Really
that.
good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's way more about develop me, but considering the time, I would like to skip the next two slides. Otherwise, we won't get to
But I
the
think
other.
it's a really good list. I know we have a
I
couple of
know.
lists here, right? But
Yes.
what they're asking for is actually worth $1 million, especially the financial knowledge.
No, you're right,
Yeah.
and there's also in the report how to work together with universities and etc. But I would like to go to the next section on equip me. So what do the next generation expect when they come into the companies?
Yeah, and I think we can probably all this resonates with probably many of us, but particularly for the younger generation who've grown up with, being in a digital world. They've grown up with apps for everything. It's like sometimes, when they've gone into a working environment and they're working with tools. We spoke with one young person as part of the research interview process who was aghast that the tools that she was working with were built before she was born, and things in many cases, we're still in an archaic system, but we know that companies are investing heavily in digital, and that's the future. So again, it's probably setting expectations when young people come in, and harnessing their expertise. And I think you were saying already, that in terms of knowledge of AI and machine learning, this harness the creativity and the technical aptitude of this next generation, because I think they're going to help us all move forward into a new digital world.
Yeah.
The new generations are extremely resourceful people. And I say that as a mom of one who is 19 years old, but is extremely resourceful generation. And they also have high expectations from the workplace. Now, older generations get upset with them over that, instead of actually taking that as a challenge and really making our workplaces more attractive for all of us. So I think there is definitely more work we can do as the legacy leaders.
Yeah. No, interesting point, because this slide is reflecting the question. Do I get the tools to do my job effectively? And what I see now, the younger generation is embracing ChatGPT and the likes. So if they are not given the tools, they will find the tools online.
Exactly.
To do their work better and more efficiently. So this question should be also updated in a sense. Do I receive the tools and maybe not? And that's what this slide is reflecting. But the younger generation is building the tools themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but here, still, well, the technology at my company helps me to do my job efficiently and effectively. Well, 26% disagree.
That's a company feature here.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, as a company feature.
And that's
So I think,
probably a fair response. Sorry.
No, quite right. Yeah, and I think we know we're all still on the journey to
Yeah.
digitization. So yeah, more work to be done. Lots to do.
Yeah. So yeah, and I know still companies working with black and green screens in their ERP environment, and now they create layers on top of that underneath. It might be an old system, but the younger generation is able to create a UI and a user interface on top of that, so they can work with it. So that's the new world.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
another section is talk about advance me. So maybe that's something you could address, Beth.
Yeah, this is again kind of speaks to the slide earlier on about what do young people want, and they were looking for career progression, they were looking for training opportunities and the opportunity to grow. And actually, the really good news here is that look at that, 81% say yes, my job challenges me and gives me opportunities to develop and grow. So that's fantastic. But what I wanted to highlight from this one is what I've ringed in the bottom corner, which is actually about that visibility of, yes, I'm growing, but I don't necessarily see a path forwards in terms of, where do I go next? And, although, the workplace and the needs of the business, they change their dynamic, but nevertheless, I think there's more that companies can do in terms of setting out opportunities that might not always be upwards as well necessarily. It might be a lateral move, to get more experience across different parts of the business or different parts even of supply chain. So companies that are actually sort of setting that out a bit more clearly, again, if you're not doing that, then that's what this group is looking for. You should be doing that if you can.
Yeah. And I had a workshop done last month about the supply chain talent pipeline, and even companies who do have a career path, they see a lot of leakage, so people are leaving anyway. So it's also a matter of managing expectations. So if you have a visible and a clear career path, you should manage the expectations. And one of the recommendations I got from supply chain manager is you will only get a next step in your career if you have your current job into 2.0. So if you have improved your current job, then you go to the next level. So it's also managing expectations. So companies do have a clear career path, but like you see here, a lot of them, they don't have it. So it's also a matter
Yeah.
of managing expectations.
And providing in some cases, the tools to actually, if you know what's ahead and what you need to get there, actually, can you help them fill in the skills that they need?
Yeah.
So yeah, they're not alone. I think that might even be on the next slide, but I forget.
Yeah. So this is also important.
Yeah.
Well, do tell what you find
Yeah,
important
exactly
here.
that. It's like, okay, so you're growing with the company. What, tools and resources do you have access to or you would like? So, a good number. So on the left-hand side, in the dark blue, have these resources provided by their employer. So access to third-party development, to a mentor, to a coach. That's fantastic. I think what sort of, again, stood out for me on this is that the value that is seen from mentors. I think companies could do more on this because 22% of people actually seeking out their own mentor because they're that's in many cases what people do, but actually could companies actually be more proactive in setting up a mentoring program? There's clearly a desire for it. I think the understanding of the value that a mentor can provide has, I think, increased over recent years. We talk about it a lot more, and we see companies that are members of Boom doing this to very high effect, and it helps then, of course, not just the person who's being mentored, but the mentee themselves. You talked about that earlier in that Mars situation. So yeah, really, really useful to do.
Yeah. And
I
Anna, what's
believe
your
I believe in mentorship. I believe in providing that sort of support system for other people who are actively seeking out to bounce ideas and share experiences and have been reaching out to me throughout my career. I still believe that the biggest enabler is the manager. And it's very unfortunate that often people would approach me with a mentorship advice because they had a bad manager. And then I saw some numbers. I saw a number that is this. It reads something like 82% of people in the workplace would like to be seen as a person, and only 29% of business leaders are truly effective human leaders. So if the number is 29%, or it is perceived to be so low, this could be the number one, I would say, the low-hanging fruit for everybody to tackle, right? Because these are the people who decide your career. And perhaps this is a result of lack of training cost, lack of investment. Maybe it is, not in the culture of the company. Maybe company is short-staffed and everybody is very busy with just executing the business, and sort of, training is not a priority or development is not a priority. But that's what we're seeing, and this could also explain the gap of our diversity. The drop of our diversity women percentage, moving from lower levels in the organization to more senior ones. It's that lack of focus on development that just needs to be there. So just my 2 cents. I do believe
No,
in
I
mentorship.
agree.
I just don't think it's really the solution. The solution is training and demanding our managers at all levels to make that a priority.
Maybe to
No,
the
agreed.
last section of your survey, to tie it all
Yeah.
together, include
I
me.
will do. And I will really, really quickly, because I'd like to acknowledge what Krista has said in the chat, which is a question that career paths are also important for senior employees. Absolutely, Krista. And I think that's kind of also important, the kind of the higher you go, sometimes the opportunities are fewer because there are fewer senior roles. One other perspective is, I think, particularly for, the younger generation, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. For more senior people, perhaps you have a bit more sense of what opportunities are out there and the sort of confidence to go and pursue those. But I agree, nevertheless, it's important for senior leaders as well.
Yep.
Yes, last but not least, and we've talked about words earlier, and this comes up here. This, this is some specific things. What can you do to be more inclusive? And we're looking here at recruitment. So the words that you use in job ads, that this might sound simple, but changing. What did you say, Martin? From logistics to supply chain had an instant impact. Making sure that we're using gender neutral language, and just making it a bit more inclusive. Having diverse recruitment interview panels, so that again, this is a story from actually a young black woman in the US who said that she went and interviewed at, I think, 3 different companies, and only one of those companies on the recruitment panel that she went to did she see somebody who was like her, and she chose to go and work for that company. So it's kind of things like that are important. Actually, again, putting your intentions and focus out there, so, in supply chain job adverts on your website, stating that this is something that's important to you as a company and this is what you're doing to support it. There are lots of different things here, and on the next slide as well, Martijn, which again, the PDF will be available. The report is there, so you can go and have a look at this in more detail.
Yeah. In development, it's not a matter of attraction, but also of development and career path. So wrapping up, so these are the 5 sections you mentioned in the report, and it will be available right after this. And what is the good news?
Well, here's the good news, and this is, again, very heartwarming and encouraging after, such a difficult few years and actually ongoing, still challenging, that 90% of respondents said that they would recommend a career in supply chain to others, which is only good news. So obviously this is not just women, this is mixed, this is, everybody who was saying this. There were no differences between the genders when it came to this question. The positivity was equal, but really, really good way, I think, to sort of end and to look forward.
So we have 2 minutes time for questions. So I don't. You've seen the chat, all kind of questions popping up. Something you want to address to wrap up, Beth?
No, just thanks for the questions that have come in. Clearly, some of this resonates, so it's great to get your feedback.
Yeah, right. So like I said, we have an extra 30 minutes afterwards. So please join us at the table, table 1, and you can have a direct conversation with the 3 of us. So you can talk further with us, because I see some interesting comments I would like to address. But considering in time, we're running out of time in the usual 60 minutes. But we have an extra 30 minutes right after this. So stay tuned and join us in the lounge. like I said, there's way more content. So in the middle, there's the PDF of the report Beth has been addressed. To the left, we have created 3 checklists based on academic surveys, etc. A lot of research has gone into it. A checklist for the female talent, also for their manager and for the HR manager, different angles. So very practical. So what should you do to progress for these 3 angles? And we should also consider a checklist for the mentor, but we haven't been able to do that till now. And on the right, you see the link to the survey Beth has been mentioning. I will also support this and will mention that to my audience.
And Martijn, may I just share really quickly? We have a session, an online session tomorrow at 4 o'clock GMT, where we're talking about inclusion in supply chain. If anybody would like to join for that, and I've shared the link there.
Yeah. Please do so. Boom will be hosting a live online event tomorrow. That's on the March 7. Sorry. So that's tomorrow. And what we will be doing, and I will also be joining, we'll have an innovation workshop with only female supply chain directors in Amsterdam. Already 50 people have been registered, so that's good news. So that we'll be doing on Friday. For now, I would like to thank Anna for your reflection from the business.
My pleasure. I hope I didn't push you over the time limits. I might have, but I hope you'll forgive me.
No, yeah, fine. Thanks for
much to talk about.
Yes, and thanks again, Beth, for joining and addressing this great survey. And we'll stay in touch. And we will now going to the virtual lounge. So thank you for all the audience for participating, and I hope you liked it. And hopefully you will join us in the lounge. So go there, and you will see us over there. And for the rest of the audience, thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you in another webinar. Thanks for now, and bye-bye.